Welcome to another edition of Park Talk Podcast, the official podcast of the Naperville Park District.
Hi everyone, I'm Sue Omenson, your host for this series. In today's episode, we welcome a group of 6th grade students from Kennedy and Madison Junior High Schools in Naperville who call themselves the MADScientists. They are studying the effects of fertilizers on pollution of our ponds and streams and wanted to share their findings with the Park District and the community. I am excited to welcome the MADScientists to the studio, Mira, Sia, Dia, and Anjali, along with Dr. Shramani Chakravarti, their parent advisor. So Dia, in your research, what was your basic question?
So we decided to investigate the problem of excess phosphorus in our rivers' waters. And through our research, we found that too much phosphorus in our water can lead to lots of algae growth, and too much algae takes up all the oxygen in the water, leaving none for the fish, and so the marine life die. And this causes lots of dead zones where there's no marine life. And we also found that 40% of this phosphorus comes from artificial fertilizers that people use on their lawns. And 40% comes from wastewater, and 20% comes from other sources, including animal and plant waste. And so we decided to find some natural alternatives to artificial fertilizers. And we started out by finding the top 4 natural fertilizers that were used around the world. And they were cow manure, goat dung, sheep dung, and coconut peat moss. And coconut peat moss is a natural fertilizer that actually comes from the fiber of a coconut tree. And we also used a very commonly used artificial fertilizer, and it's very commonly used around our community. And so we decided to use that for our test. And we set up an experiment where we had the 4 natural fertilizers, 1 artificial fertilizer, and we also had a control tray where we put no fertilizer, and we wanted to compare it to the ones with fertilizer. And we also duplicated our trays in case we had some backup. And we did this over a course of several months, and we tested phosphorus every 3 weeks. And the Naperville Water Department actually tested our phosphorus for us. And we also tested grass and soil quality because we wanted to see how the fertilizers would have an impact on our green grass.
Well, that sounds like you carefully set everything up. So what did you find after all that?
So from our data that we collected, we can conclude that our cow manure and our goat dung, along with our control tray, had less phosphorus than the artificial fertilizer. And coconut peat moss and sheep dung had slightly higher phosphorus, not too much, but slightly higher. And our grass and soil quality was very similar across all our trays. So we can actually have the same green lawns we have now, and we can also be helping the environment if we use natural fertilizers.
That is terrific. That's good for people to know. So with those kind of findings, what do you plan to do next?
So our next move is definitely going to be to share our results with the community. We've already gotten this opportunity with the podcast, and we've also gotten invited to a Naperville board meeting by the Naperville Parks head director, and that would be really great if people saw, once we shared our results, what the reality of the problem is. And another big thing that we would love to take in consideration is to partner up with the local parks or golf courses to actually test our solution in real life to see how the natural fertilizers affect the ecosystem and how it affects the people using them, to see whether or not it's going to yield the same results.
It seems like a good idea to go study, go beyond the laboratory. Like, I know you had very controlled circumstances, and like you were saying, to go and actually test a real lawn or a golf course or something like that.
We also tested on a really small scale. Like, literally we tested in one of our team members' sunrooms, to actually test it with the real environment, I don't know, like mowing the lawn. Like, even though it's not a big thing, it makes a huge difference on what may actually be going on, like under the soil, what's going on with the grass health and everything else.
Great. One more question. Just how hard is it to get those natural fertilizers compared to the artificial ones?
So we buy our artificial fertilizers in the store, whether they're granular or they're liquid or spray. We buy them at the store, maybe Home Depot or wherever you go. You can also buy cow manure at the store, but make sure it's composted because fresh from the stores, it's not safe to use. But when we actually went to the farm to get goat dung and sheep dung, it's perfectly safe to use fresh from the source. And we went to Johansson Farm, and they were ready to throw it out. And it's really easy to get to. And coconut peat moss you can also buy from a store. You can order it online. It comes in a brick, and you just need to cut it up. And
also with special fertilizers, like some of them, like the sheep dung and the goat dung, there you can really apply anywhere. But with the coconut peat moss, one thing that we learned is it's definitely one best to use in an area where it's really dry, because it doesn't need much water, like because it contains its moisture. And that's one thing that we kind of wish we had learned through our project, because our tray kind of didn't go so well after we saw that we watered them all the same. Okay. And so the coconut peat moss tray didn't need that much water, and it ended up getting too much water. So at least now we can say that it can be used in more dry areas.
Great. And Mira, since all this is outside of your schoolwork and it takes a lot of time, what keeps you going? What do you enjoy most about this research?
So we all had activities going on outside of school, and it was like pretty hard to find a time where we all were free. But we all managed to find one time, and we made sure to keep that time free for every week. We wanted to make it like 2 hours, about like a 2-hour window where we all were free. So also, it's like that we really enjoy this project, so we don't really want to miss anything.
I can tell. I mean, that's really what keeps you going, right? That you think it's really fun.
Yeah. And so we did a lot of research on this in the summer. So, like, we chose this project and we're really excited about it. And then, actually, we all had, like, a certain favorite part. So, like, okay, my personal favorite was when we were practicing all the presentations, because we made a lot of mistakes, and it was very funny. Another thing we all liked was when we were setting up the experiment, because actually when we were setting up the trays and all the soil, we were doing it in the garage, so it was cold. It was actually cold, and then so when we went inside, it was a lot of fun. And then we all actually secretly enjoyed the long meetings, because we would get off topic a lot. And then also, when we were measuring the amount of coconut peat moss you were supposed to put in one tray, it was like really hard to cut. So we actually were trying a bunch of different methods to get 1/6 of the brick. And so we actually even tried a cheese grater and like tried using a saw. It was a lot of fun.
Well, when I heard your presentation, back in February to the mayor and to Ray McGurry and the Parks Department, and I was really impressed with all the practical things that go into research. You have to go out to a farm to get sheep dung and things like that, and then you're talking about how to cut this great big brick of peat moss. You must have learned a lot.
Yeah, we sure did.
Anjali, in general, what do you think, this is kind of a hard question, but what do you think that scientific research can help? Do you think it can help people take better care of the environment?
Well, we think it is important for everyone to realize that they can make a difference. No contribution is too small to our society. And once you recognize a problem, you need to use the scientific method to solve it, because that's like one of the essential ways to solve a problem. And our main hypothesis was that the phosphorus runoff would be greater in artificial fertilizers. And our experimental variables were the type of fertilizer that we used, since that was different in all the trays. And our control variables, we had a lot of them on the list couple, were the amount of water given to plants, the sun received, the amount of soil, etc. When people see our research and data, we hope that they will change their perspective from people thinking that artificial fertilizers are good to people thinking that artificial fertilizers are bad and natural fertilizers should be used more often. We hope that good research and data collection are vital in helping us reach the goal by ensuring that our data is accurate.
I think that you found how much work it takes to get good data, right?
Yeah.
Was there anything that you had to change, like to make sure you were getting better data?
Yeah, originally we were only going to have 6 trays with fertilizers and the control. But we also duplicated them because we found out that we would most likely might make a mistake with one, and we wanted to have a backup.
Good idea. And I would remember being impressed with the pictures of all of those trays, and the way you measured the results. You measured a lot of things, right?
We did.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that you measured?
So we measured, every week when we went to one of our team members' houses, where our experiment was, we would measure the length of the grass in our trays. And we would do this by imagining the trays in different quadrants.
Okay.
And we would measure the tallest blade in that section, in that quadrant, and say, okay, and we would tell what we called the recorders, and they would record down. And after we would find every grass length in each of the quadrants, we would average them, and that was our...
That's a great idea. I mean, that takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
But I think that's good that you were collaborating with each other too, because you had help. It wasn't like you were doing it by yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do your teachers think of this? Do they know about it at school?
Yeah. Actually, since 3 of us go to one school, we actually had a presentation to one of our teachers. Our social studies one, because our science teacher wasn't available. But she gave us some great feedback, and she seemed to was really impressed with it. And we also, when we were in that article, I think, we sent it to all our teachers, and they immediately sent us an email congratulating us, and
Good.
They were very supportive.
Well, thank you all so much for being here today, and we hope that you keep on doing research like this, because you're just getting started, and there's so much to learn. And I know the Park District also is doing our own research on how our different fertilizers are affecting the soil. So we look forward to seeing what you come up with next, and wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to submit your comments, suggestions, and questions for our mailbag segment through our website at napervilleparks.org/podcasts. Additional information on Naperville Park District programs and services can be found at napervilleparks.org. The Naperville Park District's mission is to provide recreation and park experiences that promote healthy lives, healthy minds, and a healthy community. Park Talk Podcast is a production of the Naperville Park District.